Congratulations, you got a drone. Let's go film planet Earth. These settings are really simple, better double check them 9 times anyway. Turn the drone on and take off.
The home point has been updated.
Wow, it's a lot louder than you thought it'd be, but you're in debt, so you have to commit. 100 feet away, it's still noisy. Everybody's looking. Everybody can hear it. Don't look at the drone too long, you won't see what you're filming. You can't look at the screen too long, a building might come out of nowhere. Time to check the settings again because the exposure is off. Oh, you pressed auto, all your settings reset. The drone's still buzzing. Wow, this would be an expensive crash, huh? Now the birds are coming. Some old lady just pointed. Try to ignore it. Nosy guy is now invited to come ask how high and how fast it goes. Don't fly over any don't look at that airport. The FAA chopper is going to send Black Ops down in parachutes. Don't let your hand jitters ruin the shot. Squeeze the nipples hard enough so you can keep a smooth flight. These birds are getting really angry. You could accidentally saw a dozen people in half if you're accurate, so don't think about that at all. Focus on the shot because cinematic is what we want. You're almost at 20% battery, so the bomb siren is going to go off. What about photos too? You're already out there. You have to get the photos. You have enough. Why does it get louder when it's holding still? Why does it feel like you're doing something illegal even though it's legal? I've pooed myself over this plenty of times. Good news, I've got multiple solutions. Let's not pretend you're just going to change as a person. That advice sucks. Out of all the drones I use, out of every country I've been to, this is just what works. Situations that are way less anxious that let me get better footage because I'm calm. Everybody's advice is to go to an open field that's obvious. This is for when you want actual stuff to film. To give you a fast, simple answer, anywhere with open water is just an easy win. You basically aren't flying over people. If you are, they're really easy to avoid. If you crash, the only thing that hurts is your ego and your wallet maybe. Even the Mini 2 has bottom sensors on it to detect the water if it's going to crash. If you're worried about crashing though, don't go far over the water. Just stay over the beach or the shore where if it crashes it lands in grass. Nobody goes to a lake or a lagoon or something to nap or to go out on a boat and fall asleep. They're wakeboarding or they're jet skiing or they're doing something with their family and there's 10 of them or they're drunk. Everybody is making a ton of noise and doing outdoor physical stuff. Nobody cares about a drone. If they do, they go, oh man, that's neat. But it's like an open public area, so even if they were upset about it, what are they going to ride over to you and tell you can't do it? You're in an environment where everybody's having a good time, so you're not going to get any Karens who will run over with their sunglasses on and get mad at you. You can use that time to get all the stress and anxiety of the noise and being uncomfortable with people looking, all that stuff out of the way because you're in a safe zone. Once you get the muscle memory down and you get used to flying a drone and the chaos, then you can move up to a neighborhood or something. A big issue is that people think drones are carrying a 600mm lens and you're taking pictures of them in their underwear inside their house. Nobody realizes it's a huge fisheye and you're just filming landscape. But even if they wanted to make that claim, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy when you're in public at a park. If you're taking pictures or videos, not of people, but just in general, at a park, nobody can say, I'm witness protection and I don't want my identity seen anywhere, because why would they be in public? Everybody's taking pictures with their phone and stuff. This isn't because anybody's going to chase you down with a lawsuit. This is just because in your mind, you assume the worst case scenario that every single person is mad that you're there. But even if they were, a park is exactly where you would take a drone to. If you don't want to deal with people, don't make it obvious, go sit on a bench on the opposite end or fly from your car. To give you an application of using the drone, let's say you want to film a mountain, but there's no road that will lead up next to it. So you have to take off in a neighborhood at the bottom of the mountain or somewhere nearby. I would imagine neighbors running outside throwing rocks, trying to put me on trial for witchcraft. That just, it doesn't happen. That never happens. Everybody knows now, if there's a house for sale, they're probably going to get drone photos taken of the outside in the neighborhood. When you see a truck with branches in the back of it, you don't come over there and say, what are you doing? You just assume it's a neighbor. Somebody's doing landscaping and it's one of the houses in the neighborhood and they just needed room to park the big truck. So if I want to go in a neighborhood, I will park in a spot between two houses. So every house assumes it's the neighbor. The sidewalk is your best friend. Nobody owns the sidewalk or the road. If you put your drone in the road and take off, even as nosy as old people are, it's still super rare for them to come over and try and tell you what to do. If you're in a rich, fancy neighborhood where there's tons of gates and all the signs that say no trespassing and stuff, you can also just take off from your car if you really don't feel comfortable. Put the drone on top of the car. I do this all the time. In fact, I fly from inside my car. You're going to have tons of people who will claim, oh, that's just asking for trouble. But I do it all the time. It works completely fine, especially if I'm only flying 100 feet away, so that if people walk by, they don't immediately know it's me from 100 yards away. Maybe it would help a little bit if I sit outside, but it's not the end of the world. You don't have the sun glare on the screen. You can just sit like this and focus on nothing but the way the drone is moving. Sometimes the toughest guy you know comments online, if I saw that thing, I'd get my 12 gauge and blast it out of the sky. And this is actually really common, so they made a term for situations like this. It's called a felony. That's where the conversation ends. Even if it were over his land, you could be the utility company for all he knows. The FAA controls the air, not him. He can't tell a 747 not to fly over his house. Even worse, if it's not even his house, it's just out in the woods or something or at a park. If you have a registered drone, it's considered aircraft to the FAA, so you can confidently relax. This guy has to buy you a new one if you call the police after he shoots it down. I also have to appreciate this logic. Drones are really dangerous. I better get my killing tool and shoot in the direction of anybody that I cannot see, and this will keep things safer. I teach a course on drone video. I've got thousands of students, so I've had to talk about this plenty of times. That's how I know this stuff. Of all the stuff I filmed for years with the drone, I've barely had like an issue or a huge problem with somebody in public getting aggressive. I've scared some kids. I've made a lot of seagulls really angry, but I've still never had somebody confront me angrily. You only ever hear about these stories once in a while in like a Facebook group or something, but you have to wonder, is it the person? Are they flying over someone's pool 10 feet above it? So sometimes, yeah, it's warranted and people get mad because, you know, you're in their backyard during a birthday party or something. Your next best friend in neighborhoods, vacant lots, or construction. An empty lot might be owned by a company or a person, but they're not sitting on a chair in the middle of it waiting for somebody to come by and do evil to their land. It's probably got a big fence around it with a number in case somebody wants to call and buy it, and that's about it. So if you park outside, it's not an immediate threat to anybody, and if you take off with a drone, people just assume you're taking pictures of the land right there. If it's construction, it's even better, because everybody in a construction site has so many things to do, they don't give a crap about what you're doing, or they assume that you're there to take photos of the property, so they're not going to bother you. Or it's after 5, everybody's gone home, and neighbors will assume you're just doing like progress photos for the lot. What about when you're going to film something like a mountain or a park and you have no idea what to expect when you get there? Shut up, yes you do, because you have Google Earth and it's the entire planet mapped. You have so much information to learn this ahead of time if you're anxious about it. You can see which spots of land aren't occupied or are under construction. I know this isn't always up to date. It's still a much better heads up than knowing nothing at all, and you can see the way the roads are and look for little spots where you might be able to park. Or without having to drive through neighborhoods and look for spots, you'll get a heads up of all the roads nearby where there might be a park or a lake or something that you could park next to and take off from there. If you want to do the 3D version and zoom in, you can kind of predict the way the angles are going to look from your drone's perspective. You're walking down the street at night and you look over into the woods and you see a guy. It is 10 times worse than looking over and seeing 2 guys. If it's 3 guys, they're like doing something for work. If it's 2 guys, they're throwing a frisbee. 1 guy though, standing out in the woods, it's so much worse. Guys alone in the woods don't even want to see guys alone in the woods, because it's like serial killers don't serial kill in co-op mode. They want to do that alone. If you're doing something somewhere with a drone, and you have a buddy with you, suddenly you're a YouTuber or a content creator, and it's okay. If you've got 3 people, it's a movement, and the person without a drone is the loser for not being involved. I'm not saying do this every time, it just helps a lot to build up the confidence and get used to being in public, and it's really helpful if you're going somewhere like a pier at the beach or a tourist attraction on the highway where a ton of people are standing. For me, I just tell my girlfriend I'm gonna break up with her if she doesn't stand and watch me do this. And even if somebody was upset, it's a lot harder to go bother 2 people about something you don't like than it is to harass 1 person. So it just helps. This also solves my massive aversion to flying in front of people, because you have somebody to field questions. When somebody comes up to you and goes, gee, I understand you're busy, but how far does it go? How fast does it fly? You have somebody to deal with this person now, so it makes it a million times easier. If it's something that's just way too difficult to get close to, you can't park next to it because there's 1,000 people and you just don't want to take off because somebody local, like a security guard, will say, hey, it's private property, which by default, they don't want your drone there. Go a road over, take off and fly it as close as you can and just crop in. You're using 4K footage, 5.1K on the Mavic 3, 5.4K on the Air 2S. You have tons of room to crop in before it's noticeable and it's a huge loss in quality. You can crop in 200% and that still makes it 1080p. Instagram videos are only like 1440 by 1080 anyway, so barely anybody's going to notice the change in quality most of the time, so it's better than having nothing. If you're in a suburban town, it's way easier to get around doing this stuff because you have lots of road, field, and area that just isn't used that you can pull your car into and take off. You have trees for cover that you can hide behind so long as you don't hit them when you take off. Your best friend in that case are church parking lots because most of the time they're empty and you've got tons of room to park. If you're in a city, your best friend is a parking garage. You just have to be careful that the security guard doesn't get mad and come chase you out and say you can't fly here. However, I've taken off from lots of parking garages. I've only had it happen twice. One of them was like 1 in the morning, to be fair, so it did look weird, and I had the Inspire 2 with me. I thought it was public parking. I didn't think it was private. So major cities are an issue, though, because most of them have a ton of issues with drones in parks and stuff. San Francisco, for example, has a blanket "don't fly your drone here" policy in every park. However, all they have control over is what happens in the park. You can take off from a boat and fly in if you want to. They can't do anything, they have no control over the air, and it's none of their business then. It's just you showing up with the drone and taking off right there and making your headquarters the park. That's not okay with anybody. You don't really get in any trouble when you do stuff like this and take off with a drone. They just go, hey, shoot. and then that's the end of it. If you do get caught. I've been in San Diego, and at Point Loma, I took off to film by the cliffs, but I took off right at the trailhead, and a park lady comes over and goes, sir, I don't know if you saw the sign, but this is a no drone area. And then I just flew back home. I was done filming anyways, but I flew back and then just put my stuff in and left. That was the end of it. This was years ago though, and I didn't know. Basically, the way drones are now, the rules are there to address a problem. Don't be a dick. They have to put the big warnings there to say, don't fly your drone here, because some 8th grader will get a drone and fly it over people's head or chase people's dogs or something. That's what they're trying to prevent. Nobody cares about some guy taking real estate photos. Even if you do wind up in a situation where you broke a rule and you didn't know it, it's not the end of the world. They're just like, stop because the policy says don't. But if you're not being a dick, it's not a problem. So the parks, for example, if you're not going to be a dick, yes, you can fly in from somewhere else where you're allowed to take off. But again, don't be annoying about it and fly right over people's heads, because then it becomes a problem and there are more strict rules. Another interesting thing about San Francisco, there's a rule that's like, don't take off within a certain distance of people. There's people everywhere, so usually you can't. But if you find a road that's not busy and nobody's around, you can totally take off from there, and I guess then once it's in the air, it's okay. Super weird, but that's the way the rules are. In Europe, most countries have a blanket, don't fly near people. So if there's a city, stay on the outside, film the nice angles, but you can't go flying right through the middle of the city because that's just the rude thing to do, and then you're over people in established areas, which is like cars and buildings and houses. That is only annoying if you're trying to do something like a town reel or real estate where you're taking pictures of an apartment that's for sale in the middle of a city in Germany, or you're trying to highlight all the famous things in your city like an old cathedral or something. At that point, you would have to just film on the outside and zoom in, or get permission to take off for a little bit inside the city. Again though, if you're just there as a hobbyist, it's not the end of the world. You can still fly your drone. I know that old people get on Facebook and they start saying the FAA wants our money. They're this huge villainous organization that's just after us and they want to lay down the law. It's like 5 guys making like $45,000 a year sitting in a room trying to figure out how do we deal with drones without making it like super complicated. I know, because my partner went to go to a meeting to talk about regulation changes for night flying. You really got to stop doing this fake news stuff, clicking on every super scary headline and turning it into a thing when it's not a thing. You aren't going to get fined $1 billion if you go to a foot over the limit by accident or something. And to give you an idea of how relaxed the FAA is and willing to work with people they are, there was a guy who was flying every day in Philadelphia. I think it was Philadelphia. They saw his YouTube channel and they were like, here's a sternly worded letter, not to bother you, but could you please stop doing that because it sets a bad example. And he decided, I'm just going to completely ignore it. And then he kept flying, and they sent him another one, and we're like, listen, you got to stop doing this. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. And he kept doing it and kept doing it, flying downtown in super restricted airspace. And after all these warnings months later, then they sent him a huge fine. And he still got to make a YouTube video about it to talk about it. The FAA is not waiting in their abduction van to radio the black ops to drop out of a plane and come parachute down and tackle you. They don't have the budget for this at all. They don't care about videos going up online. They can't tell who filmed it. They don't know if it's stock footage, if you had permission, if it was from a helicopter, if you were just standing in a helicopter and filmed something in illegal airspace. They don't know. They don't have time to deal with it. They're not this omniscient being. They just are saying, stop being a dick with a drone so we don't have to make actual rules. And that's the point we're at right now. Drone community has been very vigilant and pretty good about it because everybody got a license and realized you barely need to know the info. So they all attack each other about it online. But in general, it's not that stressful. Nobody is angry at you for flying a drone. If your problem is noise and that's your concern, the same people who complain about drones buzzing everywhere and they're going to shoot him down with a shotgun is the same old guy who's blasting a Harley up and down the boardwalk, just bothering everyone possible. So find a park somewhere inside your city where it's okay to take off with your drone and just practice the movements. Use the app ALOFT just for peace of mind. Not because it's likely anything's going to be an issue, but just so that you know it's super, super clear and there's nothing going on. You can look at the location that you're planning on filming and it'll tell you if there's any issues with flying there or if you're nearby an airport or whatever. Just practice 20 feet away, then 100 feet away, then 300 feet away. And then the next time you're at a beach and you have the muscle memory, you can worry about people separately. And it's not so much stress because you have to worry about flying and how to make this thing work and dealing with everybody looking and the questions that people ask you. And then pay attention to when you see someone else with a drone and how the headspace you're in when you're going to get groceries or you're just driving by, whatever, and you notice it, you're so removed from that situation, you're like, oh, drone. And you always look and people point at it, but most of the time it's to go, oh, that's neat. Not because anybody's like, we got to shoot it down now. That's the end.